Good afternoon. On behalf of the Carney family, we welcome you to this celebration of life of Matthew Carney. My name is Reverend Betsy Senegar, and as I'm coming to understand, it's always a challenge in a large family. I'm the second cousin of Matthew. So we're second cousins of this wonderful family, and it's wonderful to reconnect on this day and to celebrate the life of Matthew. As you are able, and as well, my colleague, Father Troy Preston, has been very kind in offering this space as well. So it's always a thrill to be able to work together with Father Troy. So we thank you, Troy, for allowing us to use this space in honor of our family member and friend. As you are able, can you please stand? We have come together to remember the life of Matthew Francis Carney III, to commend him to the ever after, to commit his body to be buried, and to comfort those who mourn with our sympathy and love. May peace be with you.
And also with you.
We remember on this day our brother Matthew Francis. We thank the Creator for giving him to us, his family and friends, to know and to love as a companion on our earthly pilgrimage. In your boundless compassion, console us who mourn. Give us faith to see in death the gate of eternal life, so that in quiet confidence we may continue our course on earth, until we are all reunited with those who have gone before.
Amen.
Therefore, although we have been parted from Matthew, none of us need ever to be separated from the love of our Creator. For all that Matthew has meant to us, for his life and for our memories, we give thanks. For those who wish in a time of silence, let us make our personal thanksgiving. Let us join in a moment of gratitude for the unique gifts and talents which he nourished our spirits with, and the spirits of all those he brought forward in life. For the life that Matthew shared with us and the years we shared with him, the good we saw in him, and the love we received from him. Let us find the strength and courage to leave him in the care of our hearts as we remember these gifts to us and the lessons that we learned from his life with each of us. In this moment of darkness and death, let us also remember that each day brings the dawn of new life, where we are given the opportunity to be grateful for what Matthew gave to us. We are free to follow the inspiration that he gave us and learn from past mistakes. And please be seated for the readings, which are the words of comfort that are to be read by family members.
For what is it to die, but to stand naked in the wind and melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing, but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb, and the earth shall be your limbs, then shall you truly dance.
This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows, who violently sweep your house empty of all its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight, the dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
This reading is from many copies that Matthew had in his apartment as we emptied it following his death. And I just felt it was important. It seemed that he wanted this to be read. Death is nothing at all. It does not count. I have only slipped away into the next room. Nothing has happened. Everything remains exactly as it was. I am I and you are you. And the old life that we lived so fondly together is untouched, unchanged. Whatever we were to each other, that we are still. Call me by the old familiar name. Speak of me in an easy way, which you always used. Put no difference into your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed at the little jokes that we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be ever the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without an effort, without the ghost of a shadow upon it. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same as it ever was. There is absolute and unbroken continuity. What is this death but a negligible accident? Why should I be out of mind because I am out of sight? I am but waiting for you, for an interval, somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well.
I thank you, family, for your contributions for this service and for the memories that you will come forward with after I speak some of my own words. As I thought about Cousin Matthew, there's always been edge walkers, those who don't follow along with the status quo, who don't swallow the version of religion offered by those on top of the hierarchy as the only way. And at that edge, spirituality and nature are in an unbroken relationship. Matthew was on a path that includes a much bigger, a much more inclusive God, a God of social justice, a God of inclusivity, a God with deep respect for and encouragement of interfaith spirituality. He models for us a character then that can move beyond the limits of our siloed traditions, breaking the limitations and breaking barriers. What he exemplified and modeled was lifelong learning. He was a seeker of knowledge and connection with each soul, every soul that he encountered. We experienced him as curious, positive, supportive, loving, and moving towards others with a compassionate heart. For you see, Matthew's faith was incarnational. He was more interested in living the faith. And as I understand him, he lived a faith that was based on the experience of the fundamentals of life, that we can trust that we can be loved, that we can trust that we are never alone, that we can trust that the power of our Creator that makes life possible is on our side, and that love is stronger than death. And at the end of our lives, the bridge will hold, even if we need to cross it seemingly prematurely. My friends, love is stronger than death, and this is how Matthew lives on in our hearts and in our lives. It will continue to be so, and you will recognize it, each one of you, in your own way, the way that you knew him, through music, through literature, through letters that he wrote to you, through nature. Enjoy his continuing presence in your life. And now, dear one who now lives in eternity, may you be granted a safe lodging and a holy rest, and may you rise in glory. Amen. And now we'll hear from members of the family and friends.
Dear Matthew, I write this to you, my oldest brother, as a way to say thank you for sharing your life with me. I already miss you, and I know that I will think of you for the rest of my life. You were 12 years older than me. I don't really have a lot of early memories of you, but I do have a few photographs of you cuddling with me. You looked innocent and happy when you were young. Then I remember you visiting me at camp when I was 8 years old to tell me goodbye because you were moving to the West Coast. I remember asking you when you'd be back, and you said you didn't know. I don't remember much until Mom brought you home from Seattle in 1974 when I was 14. Things were bad for you. You were untethered, and I think you were really confused, frightened, and angry about kind of everything. I didn't understand what was going on. I remember visiting you at the Elmira Psychiatric Center, and then I remember the years it took you to get your feet back under you again. But you did get your feet back under you again. Our paths crossed when I was coming and going as a teenager, and then again as a college student. We overlapped in Boston when you lived there and I was living in New Hampshire. I remember visiting you at your apartment. I remember how hot it got there in the summer. I remember walking to the subway station with you when we'd go somewhere in the city and while I was visiting over the weekend. Over time, I remember watching you build a life for yourself on this side of that 1974 crisis, and then watching you slowly start to relax as you found a new place in the world for yourself here in Corning. A job, friends, an apartment, a life involved in the community, cooking, reading, and helping, always helping, wherever you could. Those were the years when I felt like you were my older brother. You were working at Bookmarks, you'd host me at your apartment. We had a lot of fun then. We'd play cribbage, we'd get silly, we'd giggle, we'd eat cheese, we'd talk about current events or history or memories we shared. I felt close to you and I knew that you loved me. And I now see how many friends you made here, how many people loved you and counted you as one of their own. The outpouring since your passing has been a beautiful thing to witness and to learn about. I am so happy for you, for the love that came into your life from your community. I wish our family could have felt easier for you. I wish my empathy and support had been felt more. I sometimes wish when I look back, but mostly I try to appreciate. And when I think of you, there are many things to appreciate. You were so steady in your love, commitment, and devotion to us. You demonstrated a commitment to family before I really understood the value of that. You gave us such an incredible gift with all the work you did on our family genealogy. You unearthed information that I'm probably going to be exploring for the rest of my life. You gave us your crazy 50th birthday party in which you embedded an unforgettable reunion with our Underhill cousins, at our family's place on Keuka Lake. You were always present at significant life events. You always wrote Christmas cards and birthday cards and anniversary cards and sent handwritten letters about whatever was going on in your life. You were devoted to us, which is really what love is about, isn't it? So for all of this, I thank you, Matthew. Even though you could sometimes be one of the most stubborn, most unreasonable, most incalcitrant human beings on the face of the planet, I thank you for your loving kindness and your generosity. I thank you for the memories you gave me. I thank you for bringing a perfect cribbage hand into our family history. I thank you for your wit and your silly sense of humor right up to your very last day. I thank you for letting me help care for you during your final days. I hope I did right for you in the end. I thank you for bringing our sibling group together for a week before you passed away. I thank you for letting me feed you yogurt and raspberries on your last morning. I thank you for loving me and for being my brother. I love you, brother. I look forward to seeing you when our spirits cross paths once again. May you rest in peace.
I promise you, there is a reason for this shirt. Matt was my first cousin, and to the rest of the Carney clan. It seems appropriate to open with a catchphrase of Matt's, at least whenever he would place one of his frequent phone calls to me. Greetings and salutations. The last time I saw Matt was a year ago tomorrow, when I was here, literally here, for Amo Houghton's memorial service in this very church. Matt and I had agreed to meet up after the service at the Glass Center, where Corning Inc. hosted an executive and public gathering. And there, in a sea of dark suits, Matt walks in wearing a Hawaiian shirt. Classic, right? So how could I not wear a Hawaiian shirt today in tribute to Matthew Francis Carney III? When I was really little, Matt seemed to be like a junior grown-up. He wore skinny bow ties and sat nearer to the adults at the holiday table. I really didn't know him a lot until I got a bit older, when I realized that Matt wasn't that far away in age. It was the age we lived in that impressed me and separated us. It was the 60s and the 70s, and Matt was the first to experience what so many people growing up in that era experienced. For example, and like it was yesterday, I remember Matt explaining to my mother the Jefferson Airplane song, White Rabbit. Crazy times. Here are some other things that I remember when I think of Matt. Speaking French. Matt loved laying down le français with a thicker accent than a native Parisian. Cheese. Actually, let's not get started on cheese and Matt. Especially French cheese. He could make chèvre sound like a gift from the gods. Granny. Matt could be said to do an uncanny imitation of Granny, Mardo and Ed's mom. But with Matt, it wasn't an imitation. When Matt said, "Well, fine," he was clearly channeling Granny without trying. Then there was Woodstock. Matt told me with a slight twinkle in his eye how he borrowed Granny's car to go to Woodstock. He said he didn't tell her where he was going, but she might just have known. Regardless, it's a fun fact that he took a little old lady's white Ford Falcon to Woodstock. On the subject of ambient lighting, one celebratory night of a family reunion at Bohemian Lodge on Keuka Lake, the lights were appropriately low, or they were low until Matt turned them fully on. But then a Carney brother, who shall remain nameless, turned them back on. And then Matt turned them back off. and then the brother turned them back on. And this went on for a bit until someone gave up. I don't remember who. Now, all fun aside, I admired Matt for three things. His interpersonal communications were extraordinary. His anti-racism was exemplary. And Matt's extensive genealogical research was just so moving to me because I don't know how to do that stuff. And here he was calling and emailing me on a regular basis, explaining his discoveries, and of course offering his latest documentation, which I always accepted and then received an enormous fat envelope several days later. Regularly, Matt came up with unusual family names and obscure but interesting fill-in-the-blanks history. Matt was many things to many people, but we can all surely agree he was a gentle soul, a kind and sensitive man. Okay, stubborn too. But I will always remember him fondly. Rest in peace, Cousin Matt.
One of the more remarkable experiences that I've enjoyed since Matthew passed was to listen to the stories that others tell about him. And some of the stories that I'm going to talk about today sound familiar based on what you've already heard. But one thing in particular strikes me as I'm here this morning, or this afternoon, is to look at this community of people from Corning and how there are faces here that I've not seen for years. And there are people that have come from a long ways whose roots were here in Corning during our childhood to join in the grief that we share over the loss of Matthew. And it's a particular comfort to me because he was my brother. So I thank you all for being here. You know, Matthew was the first child of our parents, and he is the son of Matthew Francis Carney Jr. and the grandson of Matthew Francis Carney, a doctor, a dentist. And interestingly to me, that each of these Matthews suffered some trauma in their lifetimes. My father's father died when he was 13, and my grandfather was a beloved man whom, of course, I never knew. Matthew suffered both physical and emotional trauma during his lifetime. He lost vision in his right eye when he was about 8 years old in a tragic sledding accident with my father on a toboggan here in South Corning. So as a young man, he suffered emotional disorder and a psychotic break, which Molly touched on earlier, and it took him years to recover from that. My childhood memories of Matthew are vague and disconnected, and in the last decade, I learned more about him and my own recovery experience because it opened my eyes to who he was. Now it is clear to me that there are a few landmark events that impacted his childhood and set a foundation for his manhood. These events were the first of these events was the addition of siblings to his life, at which he may remain forever connected and proud. As he grew up, the expectations of our parents were at times inconsistent with his nature. This led to combative engagements and acute stubbornness with them throughout their lifetime. He was sent to a boarding school as a freshman, and he bolted from the school in an extraordinarily traumatic state after about a month. Now labeled a troubled youth, he was institutionalized at the Institute for the Living in Hartford, Connecticut. And while caring for him in his last months, he told me a story of how he had also bolted from this place into the streets of Hartford. And when apprehended by staff, he was told he must either choose to come back or the men with nets would come to get him. We spent a lot of time together in the weeks before he died, and listening to him tell this story of trauma still makes me cry, because in contrast to his many posthumous testaments to his kindness to others and their love for him, I believe his life included long episodes where he suffered from loneliness and isolation. It also struck me it was likely he felt love-starved and misunderstood as a child. I believe his lifetime resistance to injustice and activism against war may have been germinated by this experience in Hartford. Here, his strained effort to define himself and his beliefs, here where his human desire to be free of social constraints collided with the demands of social and familiar conformity. It seems he knew who he was in that moment, and he wanted to be free to live his life. He would continue to resist conforming to the expectations and norms of society. Matthew was a good teacher for me. In life, Matthew demonstrated his practice of patience, tolerance, non-judgment, and forgiveness. As his brother, you see, there was a whole other set of lessons he was to give me on these very same subjects as I came to know his stubbornness, procrastination, and obstinacy. He taught me the impossibility of changing someone else unless they wish to be changed. Now, imagine our classroom together with life as the instructor. Put two brothers together who share the same gene pool, the same socialization and values cultivated by their shared family life. They develop their own sense of righteousness over their opinions over all things great and small. Throw in a steamroller of a mother who teaches you lovingly not to give 1 inch, and you have the perfect formula for a multitude of standoffs. Standoffs aside, he never stopped loving me. Now I see my own stubbornness more clearly and recognize he taught me that loving others puts these small but emotionally charged instances in perspective. In 1966, in the midst of the Vietnam War and the emerging unrest in the United States over the war, Matthew wrote a lengthy letter to our parents telling them of his decision to turn in his draft card in a protest event with other anti-war activists. This was one of his many expressions of activism in support of peace, nonviolence, and justice. Protest events became his lifelong pursuits and defined much of his soul and his manhood. Matthew attended Woodstock and lived communally on the West Coast. This chapter of his life ended in another major life trauma. Our mother retrieved him from Seattle in the midst of his psychotic break. It took him years to recover. His mother's love and the kindness of the Carney community were the pillars of his recovery. Home again, his soul was nurtured here, and for a long while, he found his place in life. After graduating from Northeastern University in 1980, he began life anew in Corning. From a whole beginning as a package handler at Bookmarks, he became a cheerful, knowledgeable, capable member of the staff. After his death, many have mentioned they knew Matthew from this time. Apparently, these connections with others opened doors for Matthew to express his kindness, compassion, care, and love of others. He found service to the elderly. Often parents of childhood acquaintances offered him purpose and reward. Those who knew him loved him, and he loved them back. Now, Melissa Pinkston Williams kept in touch with Matthew throughout his lifetime, and I found her message to me in an email prior to the service captured the life he shared with others so well. I asked her if she'd be willing to let me share it here, and I'm grateful that she consented to let me do so. She said, "Matthew was a dear friend of mine. I have known him since I was 5 years old and am in my mid-70s now, so he was one of my oldest and truest friends. He always stayed in touch when we grew up as adults in this world and was a steadfast, loyal friend throughout all these many years. Just weeks before he died, Matthew left me a voice message just to say hello, letting me know he was thinking about me and was always there. There are not many friends who do this, so he was very dear to me, and I've held him in my heart all these many years. I could count on him, which is so rare these days. Matt championed those who were bullied, made fun of, or mistreated victims of cruel gossip or injustice of any kind. He stood up for his friends, stood by their sides, always a lamppost for many in dark times. He kept us all laughing. He showed us what laughter and loyalty meant, and love from good friends whose light never went out. I cherish all Matt's calls all these many years and wish I had returned the last one a few weeks before he died, which will haunt me forever, as I was not there for him in his final hours. He went through so much that was emotionally difficult, but never gave up and fashioned a life in spite of everything. His was not an easy path, but he walked it with grace and always extended a hand to us all, no matter his personal struggles. What a brave soul he was. what burdens he carried and rarely spoke of, what kindness he showed to everyone. I will miss Matt all the rest of my days. I could count on him every month to call and see how things were going. A minister he was in his own right. And I will pass what he did as best I can on to others as he did for me, and it will make a difference in others' lives as it did in mine. With deep sadness, I am holding all of you in my heart. For much of my life, Matthew was an enigma for me. He didn't fit my expectations for normal. It is only now, upon reflection of his life, that who he was and what he stood for is coming clear to me. He was teaching me this throughout his life, only in my blindness I could not see it. Live and let live. Love others. Believe in justice. Be respectful of those less fortunate than you. Love your family. Matthew, in your memory, I will.
I've always been kind of a low-key, rather informal kind of guy, a little bit of a clown. And all the while I knew Matt, he was always a straight, sort of a prim and proper kind of guy. I spent a lot of time down south, and they don't waste words in conversations. And I once heard this said about people up in New York. If someone from New York didn't understand a question, they would say something like this: "I'm sorry, but would you please repeat the question? I want to make sure I understood what you said." The same situation with a southern boy, and they'll go, "Huh?" And they get the same response. Matt was the one who put a lot of words in the sentence to get the same response. If you all know Matt, you know what I'm talking about. We had conversations on many topics over the years. And me being a little old Italian boy, you know, I'd comment something like, "Yeah, but what are you going to do?" And Matt would say, "Yes, I don't know what you're going to do." And his vocabulary and his diction was so perfect. He was kind of an American Henry Higgins, if you all know who Henry Higgins is. And some days Matt would yell over to me, and he would say, "Hey, Joe, what are you doing?" And I think, oh my gosh, I corrupted Matt. That wasn't the way Matt usually talked. Sometimes in passing, Matt would call me Joseph. And whenever he would leave a note on our door, he would sometimes drop us off some of his food, or we would give him some food, and he'd leave a note thanking us. It would always be, "Thank you, Joseph. I appreciated that." We had a common relationship with my next door neighbor, Helen Harvey. Matt loved to share his culinary skills, and I didn't know that he was trained in that, but I knew he used to cook a lot, and he would talk about all these dishes he would make, and he would always share them with Helen and my family. Being Italian, I was cooking since I was like 8 years old, and cooked in the Army. Relatives had catering businesses. And I knew Matt loved to cook, and he was a pretty darn good cook. But at the time, I didn't know he had formal training. And Matt never boasted about that. Never. Matt was a very humble guy. And in all my years, I never heard Matt ever brag about who he was or what he knew or what he did. He was just so unassuming about who he was. Yeah, Matt visited Helen almost every day. And we moved into our house in 72. It was probably early 80s when I knew Matt again. He was about a year ahead of me in St. Mary's School. I didn't really know him much, just knew who he was. And After a few days, sometimes Helen would say, "Boy, I hope Matt doesn't stop by today. I'm just looking to have a quiet day alone and do some reading." And I'd be on our front porch, on our porch swing, and I'd see Matt walking up the street. I said, "Oh no, Helen was looking for some quiet time." So I'd go, "Hey Matt, how you doing?" He'd say, "Good, Joe." He said, "You know, the weather's nice." He talked about the flowers we were growing or whatever. And he said, "Well, I figured I'd stop in and see Helen for a few minutes." I said, "Well, that's good, Matt." I said, "Because talking to her earlier, she said, yeah, she just wants a nice quiet day alone." And Matt kind of thought that meant that there was something bothering her, so he needed to stay there and keep her company. So we'd go in about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd see him leave at about 10 o'clock at night. I thought, "Oh, dear God, I'm sorry, Helen. I didn't mean to do that." And you know, I've heard people thought that he could be a little bit stubborn and talking all the time. How many of you here saw the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles? Anybody see that movie? Yeah, I've seen the movie probably half a dozen times. Sometimes Matt was a little bit of both of those characters. He was kind of, you know, formal and didn't really know the small talk too much. And other times he was like the John Candy character. And I remember the movie, Steve Martin said, "You're like a chatty Cathy," and just wouldn't stop talking. And sometimes Helen would say, "Oh, Matt just talks and talks and talks." And our houses were right next to each other. And our kitchen window was on the same side of the house that Helen's kitchen was. And there were times when she wanted to be alone, and all of a sudden we would just hear the two of them with just this uncontrollable laughter, joking and laughing and going back and forth. And we would hear them laughing and hear Matt's laughter, and we would crack up in our kitchen laughing. Didn't even know what the conversation was. But Matt just brought that out with people. He's one of the kindest, most lovable people I knew. And yeah, could he sometimes be a little bit overbearing? Yeah. But you know, you look at the love and what was in his heart, and it didn't matter if he talked a lot. It didn't matter if he had to have it his way, because you knew the guy just loved you. And the love is something I think we need a whole lot more today in this world. So there were times he was at Helen so much that we thought that he moved in there at Helen's house. And there were times Helen thought he moved in too. But anyway, I'll close with this. Matt, you'll be dearly missed. You were a great friend. Rest in peace, Matthew.
Well, we've had a lot of remembrances and stories about Matthew. We've cried a little, laughed a lot. He was a complicated character, but he meant so much to me. I always enjoyed being with him. He was so curious and very eager to learn more about genealogy and social injustice. I admired that about him. And this poem I'm going to read kind of embodies Matthew and the spirit of him, and makes me realize we all have to seize the day and live each day as a gift. This is by Mary Oliver, When Death Comes. When death comes like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me, and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? and therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular, and each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending, as all music does, towards silence. And each body a lion of courage, and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world.
Let us pray. We have come here today in shock, grief, and confusion of heart. May we find peace. In our love for others, may the light of your Spirit join with others to be a guide out of darkness and into the assurance of love. Let us pray that our Creator will grant comfort and strength to all who mourn. Draw near to Molly, Alan, Phil, and Tim, and all who mourn today. Make your love known to us, that we may turn to you and receive comfort and strength. Help us to put our trust in you and our hope in your grace and compassion. As human beings, each of us is a bearer of the possibility of immense love for each other. Take this possibility out into the world, seeking its fulfillment each day in memory of Matthew. In your remembrance of Matthew, support all of us in our grief. Use us, Creator, as bearers of your love, to support all in their grief. All this we ask in your name. Amen.
There is nothing in life or death, in all the world as it is, or in the world as it shall be. Nothing in all creation that can separate us from the universal. We now entrust Matthew to the keeping of the infinite universe. And friends, remember that life is short, and we do not have much time to gladden the hearts of those who make the journey with us. So be swift to love and make haste to be kind. And now let us go forth with hope, rejoicing in the power of the Spirit.
Amen.
You are all welcome to join the family after this service for the celebration of life to continue in the church's social hall, which is right next door to the right as you leave the front of the sanctuary. Thank you.